There is a wind that stirs before the sun has risen, carrying secrets that can only be heard in the half-light of waking. It is the kind of silence that belongs to no one, and yet waits for you as if you were its only witness. In that fragile hour, before the machinery of the world begins its endless noise, something ancient leans close. It does not speak to the you who performs, who scrolls, who collects names and roles like armor. It speaks to the one who has been here before your first memory and will remain after your final breath. The unchanging presence beneath all the faces you have worn. That self is not born in the crowd. It emerges in solitude, in the space where the noise recedes and truth first draws breath. We fear this solitude, not because we despise silence, but because in silence the masks grow heavy and fall. Among others, we learn to arrange ourselves like furniture in a room, placed, posed, acceptable. But alone, there is no stage, no audience, no script, only the sound of your breathing, the slow unwinding of thought, the gravity of presence pressing inward. It is here, in this unlit chamber, that the true journey begins. This is not loneliness dressed as virtue. It is a retreat deeper into life. As Rumi wrote, "A little while alone in your room will prove more valuable than anything else that could ever be given to you." Such words are not decoration, they are prophecy. In solitude, the unseen rises to the surface, the quiet ache beneath your smile, the thoughts circling like caged birds, the emotions that never found language. Here, there is no one to impress, no performance to sustain. It is unsettling at first, the silence deafening, the stillness sharp-edged. We are creatures trained to flee from our own depths, to chase distraction when truth draws near. But if you stay, if you remain seated in the fire, something within begins to unclench. The storm of thought slows, the armor loosens. Stories about who you are and who hurt you begin to dissolve like ink in water. What remains is raw, unpolished, achingly human, and in that rawness, you are whole. Solitude is not a barricade between you and life. It is the doorway back to it. How can you truly meet another if you have never met yourself? How can you offer real love if you have not stood before the mirror and embraced the exiled parts of your soul? In that private stillness, you begin to integrate, to forgive, to see that you are not the wound, but the witness. This awareness does not arrive with trumpet or thunder. It waits for your surrender, rising like a slow, inevitable sunrise over a sea that has been there for eternity. Every mystic has wandered into the desert, the forest, the cave, not to escape life, but to strip it of its disguises. Solitude is not empty. It is full of insight, of clarity, of communion. God does not shout here. God waits in stillness, speaking through the subtle knowing that needs no words. And when at last you stop resisting your own company, you discover that simply to exist is already holy. There comes a moment on the seeker's path that cannot be taught, only endured, a crossing into a silence so vast it does not comfort, it consumes. It arrives without ceremony, without reward, the way night slides behind the last light of day. This is the void, not a metaphor, not a crisis, but the raw, borderless stillness that lives beneath all things. You do not enter it because you wish to. You arrive because everything else has fallen away. After the masks have been shed and the noise dissolved, a stillness begins to press against the edges of your awareness. It is not the gentle quiet of a safe room. It is a space that stares back. The bones know it first. The awareness that this stillness does not preserve you. It unmakes you. Here, Identities loosen like old knots. The mind panics. The ego clings to labels, to stories, to the familiar furniture of the self. But there is nowhere to run. The void has no corners to hide in, only the unyielding invitation to remain, naked and unadorned. Rumi did not turn from this place. He lived in it. He danced in its dark gravity and whispered, "Why are you so afraid of silence? Silence is the root of everything. Spiral into its void and 100 voices will thunder the messages you long to hear. But those voices do not come first. First comes the trembling, the vertigo of losing every anchor, the realization that most of life has been built not on truth, but on noise, internal and external, woven of fears and ambitions and fragile masks. Here, you are not the child chasing approval, not the worker pursuing status, not the lover searching for completion. You are stripped to presence, and presence alone. The void is not punishment. It is a womb. It dismantles with the precision of fire, not out of cruelty, but because what is false must die before what is real can live. You cannot carry your name into it, nor your trophies, nor your wounds. All must be surrendered at its threshold. In return, it offers no comfort, no consolation, only the raw truth that you are more than the sum of all you've been told. And within that truth is a silence that holds. It holds your shame and your beauty, your longing and your grief without judgment. It does not show you your reflection. It shows you your being. And when you touch it, when you are held by it, you know what cannot be forgotten, that what you have searched for was never outside. It was only hidden beneath the noise you feared to lose. The void is not the place to linger forever. It is a passage, a door you cross into a life that is not performed, but lived. The old shell cracks. From that brokenness, something stirs. Not an idea, but a living presence. You open eyes that look inward as much as outward, and in their gaze is the stillness of one who has been unmade and remade. Before we move on, we honor this dark threshold, for without it, the false would never fall. Without it, the real would never rise. The void does not destroy, it reveals, and what it reveals cannot be spoken, only lived. When the void has emptied you, when every mask has crumbled and the illusions have thinned to air, what remains is not a blank expanse, but a silence drenched in presence. It is not the presence of a God above you or a truth far beyond you, but a presence that wells up from within, soft yet immovable, alive without effort. You do not step into it with triumph or revelation. You simply awaken to the fact that it has been here all along, waiting at the edge of your attention. And in that awakening, something subtle shifts. The world outside is unchanged, but the way you see it is not. Your breath slows without discipline, as if your body remembers it is safe. Your eyes catch the quiet resting of light on ordinary things. A leaf trembling in wind, a hand holding water, the way shadows lean at dusk. Time loses its teeth. Here becomes enough. This is the beginning of the inner journey, not the dramatic ascent promised in books, but the gentle deepening into total intimacy with life itself. Rumi once asked, "And you? When will you begin that long journey into yourself?" It is not a challenge, it is an invitation. This path is not about going somewhere new. It is a return to what has always been, only now with unclouded sight. And what you see is not otherworldly, but profoundly human. You notice the small betrayals of your own truth, the way you slip from the present to grasp at the past or control the future. You see how quickly fear rises, how easily joy is missed, how deeply you ache to be seen, even by yourself. Presence is not simply noticing what surrounds you. It is noticing the one who notices. It is turning the gaze inward, not to think more, but to see clearly the unmoving, unchanging space in which every thought and feeling arises. This space is not an object you can touch. It is the watcher, the unnameable I am. Once you taste it, life itself becomes the practice. Washing dishes is no longer a chore, but a quiet prayer. Words carry weight because they are born in silence. Even solitude becomes a companion. Rumi's whirling was not a performance. It was surrender, a dissolving of self into the now, until there was no longer inner and outer, no longer self and other. Presence erases the imagined borders. You no longer stand apart from what you see. You are not in the world, you are of it. The tree is not over there, and you here. There is only the unfolding of a single, seamless moment. And in that unfolding, a kind of ecstasy blooms, quiet but complete. Presence does not demand ritual or creed. It asks only for attention, not the tight grip of control, but the open palm of love. Love that does not force, does not demand, but waits. When you give life that kind of attention, it begins to speak, not in words, but in currents, in the hush between thoughts, in the subtle pull of intuition. The universe becomes less a mechanism and more a mirror, reflecting not your desires, but your essence. The path of presence is not always bathed in light. To live awake is to see everything, even what you once buried in shadow. Presence holds no prejudice. It welcomes joy and grief with the same open hand. But in its light, nothing can hide. Old anger stirs. Envy rises like smoke from unseen embers. Sorrow seeps through walls you thought were solid. And yet presence does not reject, does not fix, does not force. It simply sees. And in being seen without judgment, pain begins to soften, to transform. Not through effort, but through recognition. Every discomfort becomes an invitation. Each trigger is a doorway, each wound a window into something deeper. The real work happens not in the calm, but in the turbulence. When you are burning with rage, when loneliness feels unbearable, when fear grips you like ice. Can you remain? Can you stay when every instinct says to flee, distract, numb? This is the crucible of presence. Here you are refined, not into ash, but into truth. It is a slow fire, patient and precise. You burn away what is borrowed, what is false, what no longer belongs. Layers of identity fall like autumn leaves, roles, masks, even beliefs about who you are. What remains is not the polished image you once defended, but the living essence that has no need for disguise. This is the quiet, unshakable center you begin to inhabit. And as you do, something unexpected emerges beneath the stillness. A hum, a warmth, a subtle current moving through all things. It is not an idea, not a philosophy, but a felt truth. Presence within presence. And it feels like love. Not the kind that clings, demands, or fades. Not romance, not transaction. A love that exists for its own sake. A presence so complete, it needs nothing in return. Rumi called it the beloved. He saw it in the glint of sunlight through leaves, in the grief hidden in a mother's voice, in the tears that fall silently at night. For him, the beloved was not outside life. It was life itself, unveiled. This love cannot be earned or summoned. It does not arrive through striving. It appears the moment you stop chasing it, when the seeker dissolves and only presence remains. It comes quietly, without thunder, without light, and yet, when it arrives, it feels like coming home, a return, a remembering. a wordless yes. And so the journey that began in solitude passed through the fire of the void and opened into the stillness of presence now begins to flower into love, not as an idea or a goal, but as a living reality. The beloved has been here all along, waiting beneath your breath, behind your thoughts, inside your every heartbeat. And now, you turn toward it. Divine love is not a sudden blaze that overtakes you. It is the ancient pulse beneath all things, steady and patient, waiting for you to notice. It speaks without a voice, looks through every set of eyes, and yet belongs to no single face. It is not bound to form, yet it lives inside every form. This is the beloved Rumi gave his life to, not a person, not an emotion, but the divine presence that hides in plain sight, revealed only to those willing to shed every layer that is not love. The beloved cannot be hunted. The more you chase it, the further it recedes. But the moment you stop, the moment you surrender into stillness, you discover it has been beside you, within you, all along, watching, waiting, loving you even in the hours you could not love yourself. This love is not hunger. It does not take. It sees. It accepts. It burns away the false, not to wound, but so the truth may breathe again. This is why the path to divine love can be as fierce as it is tender. Sometimes it arrives as fire, sometimes as loss, sometimes as the breaking open of everything you believed kept you safe. Because real love wants only one thing, your truth. And truth cannot be reached through comfort. It must be unearthed, pulled from the depths, even if it means shattering the walls you built to survive. The beloved will do this, not always with a caress, but with a chisel, not always with fulfillment, but with longing. Longing is the language of the soul calling itself home. It is the sacred ache that reminds you you are more than your body, more than your name, more than the mind's restless theater. Rumi understood this. His poems were love letters to the unseen, ecstasies born of wounds, grief turned to song. The minute I heard my first love story, he wrote, I started looking for you, not knowing how blind that was. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere. They're in each other all along. The paradox is simple. We think we are searching for God, for peace, for love. But what we truly seek is the place within where the beloved has always been. Not above, not beyond, within. To touch that place, you must stop running, stop grasping, turn inward not with force but with reverence. The journey begins in the heart, not the organ, but the inner sanctuary where grief and gratitude entwine, where every hope and every hurt is stored. To find the beloved, you must enter barefoot, with open hands. You must bow to your own vulnerability. Forgive yourself not as an act of morality, but as an act of survival. For every wall you built to protect yourself has also kept love out. The beloved will not tear them down. It will wait. It will wait for you to soften, to open, even to break. Because only in the breaking do we return to wholeness. You may not feel it all at once. The beloved often arrives as a flicker, a moment of uncaused peace, a sudden stillness in the center of chaos. Perhaps it is a tear that slips without warning, or a breath that feels deeper than the body. And in that moment, you know, love is here. Not in gestures or promises, but as a presence so intimate, it resists every attempt to name it. The more you surrender to it, the more it expands, not as an experience to be clung to, but as a way of being. You begin to move through the world differently, no longer grasping, no longer defending, You do not need others to complete you, because you have remembered your wholeness. You do not seek love, because you have become love itself. In this becoming, life itself changes, not because the world has been remade, but because you no longer resist it. You no longer divide it into good and bad, gain and loss, worthy and unworthy. You no longer demand that it give you what you already carry inside. You walk as a vessel for the beloved, a mirror in which others can see their own light reflected back. This is not philosophy. It is the living truth of the soul. And once awakened, it will not let you forget. Even in the seasons when you lose your way, the beloved will call you back. Through dreams, through pain, through beauty, through silence. Each time, it will ask the same question. Will you love again? Will you open? And if you say yes, something begins to move, not just in the bright hours, but in the shadows too. Sorrow becomes sacred. Anger becomes energy. Loneliness becomes intimacy. You begin to see the beloved in everything, in the wind against your cheek, in a stranger's smile, in the ache that refuses to leave. You understand, at last, that nothing has ever been separate. Even your suffering was a form of love, love wearing the mask of pain to lead you home. Rumi saw the face of the beloved in everything, because he had emptied himself so completely that nothing remained but love. This is the invitation, not to become someone greater, but to become no one at all. To be so present, so surrendered, that you turn transparent to the light. In such transparency, there is no need to prove, to defend, to compare. You exist as an offering, and the offering is love. Yet even now, the journey does not rest. For once awakened, love will not stay hidden in silent rooms or sacred words. It longs to be lived, to flow through your hands, your voice, your gaze. It asks to be given away, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet fidelity of presence, in patience, in listening, in showing up again and again, even when it hurts. We stand now at the beginning, not the end. For divine love, once remembered, refuses to remain hidden in meditation halls and whispered prayers. It longs to take shape in the world, not as a performance, but as a living presence. It wants your hands, your words, your eyes. It wants to pass through you into the streets, into kitchens, into the silent exchanges between strangers. This love does not burn to consume. It burns to warm. It is a flame that turns walls into doorways. Living this way is not about grand gestures. It is about the quiet choices that weave your days, pausing to listen when it would be easier to speak, offering patience when judgment rises, walking slowly enough to notice the wind in the trees. Love in action is not dramatic. It is steady. It does not demand recognition. Its only hunger is to meet each moment without resistance. When the beloved moves through you, life becomes an act of devotion. Sorrow is not something to escape, but something to hold as you would hold a child, gently, without trying to make it stop crying before it is ready. Joy becomes less of a chase and more of a natural rising, like the tide returning to the shore. Even pain becomes a kind of intimacy, a reminder that you are alive, that you are capable of feeling deeply without turning away. This way of living is not fragile. It does not crumble under the weight of imperfection. It knows the world will forget, that you will forget, that fear will sometimes return like an old habit. But each time, love waits. It waits for the smallest opening, a breath, a glance, a sigh, and steps through without hesitation. It asks no conditions. It simply arrives. To walk as love in the world is to be a mirror without distortion. People may see themselves more clearly in your presence, not because you tell them who they are, but because you no longer need to hide who you are. You are not offering them your perfection. You are offering them your openness, and in that openness, the boundary between giving and receiving dissolves. When you comfort another, you find yourself comforted. When you forgive, you feel forgiven. When you love, you discover there is no you and them, only love recognizing itself. This is the quiet revolution the beloved begins in the heart. Not the changing of the world by force, but the slow, patient transformation of presence meeting presence, moment by moment, without end. We arrive here carrying something we did not have when we began. Not a doctrine, not a set of answers, but a way of being that feels like fire and water at once. The inner journey has brought us full circle, yet we are not who we were when we started. We have crossed solitude, stood before the void, awakened to presence, opened to love. Now, the task is to return, not back to ignorance, but back to the world with our eyes unshut. This return is not about preaching or convincing. It is not about declaring enlightenment or showing your scars as proof of survival. It is about integration, allowing what was found in silence to live in noise, letting the truths of the still room breathe in the chaos of the marketplace, to carry the flame without burning, to walk as the calm center, even in the storm. The way forward is humble. It means living slowly enough to notice your own breath, listening more than you speak, meeting the eyes of others without rushing past their humanity. It means holding space for your own fragility and for the fragile truths of those you encounter. You become the quiet reminder that the sacred is not confined to temples or scripture. It is in the unwashed dishes, the half-lit doorways, the moments when joy and grief sit at the same table. To live this way is to refuse the mind's urge to divide, to see the divine in disappointment as much as in delight, to treat mistakes as teachers, not as verdicts. You learn that presence is not a posture you hold, but a home you return to again and again, sometimes easily, sometimes after getting lost for days or years. Rumi spoke of a field beyond all opposites, beyond right and wrong, where we could meet. That field is not somewhere far. It opens in every moment you release judgment and choose presence instead. To live from that field is to become the kind of silence that heals without speaking, the kind of gaze that says without words, "You are not alone. You are not broken. You are love." The journey has not ended. It has only shifted its shape. Now, each breath is the path. Each step is the prayer. Each encounter is the chance to remember and to help another remember that what we seek has been here all along. The arc of this journey bends not toward a final truth, but toward a deep remembering. We began by peeling away what was not real, the roles, the noise, the walls we mistook for ourselves. In solitude, we heard the first whispers. In the void, we were unmade. In presence, we saw with new eyes. In love, we became the very thing we had sought. And now, as the circle closes, we see it was never a straight path, but a spiral, always returning, but never to the same place. There is no longer a destination ahead, only the ground beneath your feet. The need to seek has softened. The hunger for answers has quieted. What remains is a clarity too simple to be taught. Everything sacred was here from the beginning. The journey was not a search outward. but a turning inward until inward and outward were no longer two. To carry this truth into the world is not to withdraw from it, nor to cling to the solitude that gave birth to it. It is to let the stillness travel with you, into conversations, into conflict, into the small and fleeting moments most overlook. It means letting your life become a bridge between the seen and unseen, not by speaking of it, but by living it. You will forget. You will be pulled back into noise, tangled again in the mind's demands. But forgetting is not failure. It is part of the rhythm. Each time you remember, the thread of presence grows stronger. Each time you return, the door opens more easily. The beloved does not scold when you drift. It waits, and so you become both student and teacher, seeker and guide, walking the same path you offer to others. You are no longer defined by the longing to arrive, but by the willingness to walk. This is the quiet vow, to keep returning, to keep opening, to keep loving without measure or condition. The circle closes, yes, but the path? It has no end, and now we stand where all roads meet, not at an ending, but at the place that has been beneath every step you've taken. You have walked through the solitude that strips away illusions. You have stood in the void where the self dissolves. You have awakened to the quiet, unwavering presence that has no name, and you have opened to the love that asks for nothing yet gives everything. And still, what you have found is not something new. It is what has always been here, waiting for you to notice. There is no final lesson to memorize, no secret to guard. Only this breath, only this moment, only the truth that you are not separate from what you seek. The longing that led you here was not a sign of absence, but of nearness. A thread the beloved placed in your hands long before you knew its name. And now you see, the seeker and the sought are one. To live from this knowing is to meet life without armor, to listen more than you speak, to see the divine not only in what inspires you, but in what challenges you, what humbles you, what you once resisted. It is to find God in the unremarkable, in the sound of water filling a glass, in the weight of your own footsteps, in the quiet after someone leaves the room. You are not here to become something else. You are here to remember what you are and to live from that remembrance. Let solitude be your teacher, stillness your anchor, love your language. Let the presence you have found within you become the way you touch the world, not to convince, not to convert, but to embody the truth that cannot be argued. You are love, and so is everyone you meet. And when you forget, because you will, return. Not to these words, not to a memory of this moment, but to yourself, to the one who was here before you began, the one who never left, the one who will remain long after every name and story has fallen away. You are not walking toward the sacred. You are walking as it. You are not carrying the light. You are the light, moving through the world in human form. You are not on the journey. You are the journey, endless, unfolding, and already home.